Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our workshop. My name is Herb. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm going to ask Melissa to introduce the retreat center and whatever else she wants to say.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening for everybody that's around on the other side of the world. My name is Melissa. I am here as part of the hospitality team at Mary and Joseph Retreat Center. It's an honor and a privilege to introduce Herb Kagan. I'd like to start off by telling you that Herb has been connected to the Mary and Joseph Retreat Center for many years, and he's truly part of our family. His 12 step and centering prayer groups have been extremely popular at the center for decades. And now, since the start of the pandemic, he has moved these popular offerings to Zoom. So thank you, Herb. Herb's journey includes 7 years in Claretian Seminary, a graduate education in psychology, 40 years in human resources consulting, certification as a spiritual director, 37 years of active participation in a 12 step fellowship, and the publication of 3 books on spiritual awakening. We are delighted that he is donating the proceeds of these Zoom gatherings to our retreat center during this difficult time. Thank you again, Herb.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. Nicely done. Very nice. And the retreat center has been very important to me personally and to my family, certainly. My wife went there for a women's retreat, and in that retreat in 1983, she discovered that she had a drinking problem for the very first time. She named it. We didn't know what our problem was, but she named hers, and she began to take care of that problem, which involved the family, thank God. And in February, she put herself in a hospital. I went there to support her, and I got caught in the draft, as it were. I was able to identify that I had a problem and begin my journey. Wonderfully, coincidentally enough, or maybe just the movement of the Spirit and grace, when our son was in his high school senior year, and he's the youngest, she realized that she was going to have an empty nest. So she went to work as a secretary for the retreat center to help out in administration. And within a year, the executive director retired, and the community voted her in to be the executive director. So she ran the place for the next 20 years. It's kind of an interesting gift to her and to the family also. So welcome. I'm going to put up a set of PowerPoints to guide us along here. Oh, let's see, that should have been up here like that. We're going to talk about step 4 today. It's a very informal gathering today. Informal in the sense that it's going to be an overview and some comments on one aspect of step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory. I pay attention to the big book words. Bill Wilson was a very intentional writer, a wordsmith, actually. He paid close attention to the use of words and the meaning of words. And in step 4, he uses the term moral inventory. I've come to understand that's not in contrast to immoral. That's a word that means values, coming from the Latin mores, M-O-R-E-S. And it just means values. And Bill is very clear at the opening comments on page 64 in the big book that he wants us to take a look at the exact nature of our wrongs. What I've understood and experienced from doing the step 4 inventory several times with several different men over about a 20-year period is that The resentment inventory is about my beliefs and about my motives. Those are two key words that I'll be using today. Beliefs, the lenses through which we look; motives, the energy from which we come. The key to my recovery has been getting the correct question. All my life, I was looking for answers. I went into a monastery to study to be a Catholic priest because I thought that would be the answer to my yearning, my seeking, my whatever it was that was stirring me deeply. I left after 7 years because I didn't find it. Oh, I had lots of questions and I had lots of answers, but none of them were personal. And it could have just been that I was immature. Be that as it may, I studied then psychology. And I got a lot of information, but I didn't have any of the right questions. I didn't know that then, but I know that now. I came into a 12-step program in 1984, February of 1984, because I thought I was an alcoholic because of the drama in my life. The hospital in which my wife was an inpatient, I was there to support her as an outpatient, asked me to ask myself a question. What is your relationship with alcohol? It's the very first time that I took a question like that personally. I could have just been ready, mature-wise or suffering-wise, or it could have been presented in a way and in an environment that I could hear it. And I'm hoping today that you can hear the questions. Oh, we'll talk about some answers. We'll talk about some knowledge. And I'm interested for you to understand, of course, what at least I understand, so that you can evaluate whether that's what you want to believe or not. But I'm so much more interested in you having an experience. Yes, today, an experience. We'll get some information. Yes, probably either a clarification or a confirmation. Many of you have lots of information and lots of experience in this journey. And obviously, I'm preaching to the choir. You are very action-oriented. You're a special and unique group. Who shows up on a Saturday to spend a couple hours reflecting on their own darkness? No, that's what we're doing. Inventory is not a journey through the tulips. It's a descent into the pit. I'm going to ask you to ask yourself some questions in light of my experience and my knowledge, not at a deep level today, although it'll be as deep as you have a grace and a gift to have. But I'm hoping that today you walk away with an experience, something that changes your thinking, something that changes your feeling, something that changes, actually translates into your behavior. Einstein says the consciousness that created the problem cannot be the consciousness that solves the problem. Just so brilliant. And any of you who have been exposed to me for any length of time have seen this every time. The man said to me, Herb, you have a lot of information. You have a lot of knowledge. A graduate education in philosophy, a graduate education in theology, a graduate education in psychology, 3 different areas of study and completion. I had a lot of information and exposure to human development and self-help programs of the 60s and the 70s and the 80s at that time, because I'm a seeker. And I wore that like a badge of courage. I'm a seeker. I was so clueless, I didn't know that I didn't have finding until I did the steps at 4 years of sobriety with a man who understood this work out of the big book. and I became a finder. And then I realized seeking's really good, but finding's a lot better. And he said, if you hold on to the knowledge that you have and the experiences that you have up to this point, Herb, 1988, you're prevented from having any new information or any new experience. Are you willing to be taken to a place that you don't even know exists? I mean, I hope you're hearing this. Even sitting here today with probably prior exposure to me, or at least exposure to some of these ideas, and you've had some knowledge and you've had some experience. Today, sitting here right now, listening to this, I'm convinced for you and quite frankly for myself that I don't know something. I can't even aspire to it because I don't know that it exists. But I am willing every morning to be taken to a place that I don't know exists, to be given new information, to be given a new experience. And I pray this prayer, or a prayer like it. There's nothing special or unique about this prayer in the sense of blessings from any corner of the earth or profession or fellowship. This just comes out of some interpretations of some lines in the big book, not the least of which is on page 58. Until we let go of our old ideas, it says, or something like that. Embrace this prayer as you pray it today, out loud or quietly, or not at all, but expressing the attitude to have an open mind and an open heart. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my brokenness, my spiritual path, and you, for an open mind and a new experience with myself, my brokenness, my spiritual path, and especially you. So a few questions for you, and if you want, you certainly could write them down, not the questions, but the answers that come to you spontaneously. Don't filter it. If it comes as a thought or a feeling or an awareness or an itch, scratch it. Don't judge it. Don't evaluate it. Don't dismiss it. Don't modify it. Just respond to it. Where is my life not working today? Quality, not quantity, unless quantity is an issue in terms of abstinence. Where is my life not working? My life, finances, relationships, connections to reality, connections to myself, maybe my program, maybe the spirit, maybe life itself. How effective have you been? On my own power, I was not effective. In collaboration with a power other than myself, it's a total mystery. But in collaboration and cooperation, I am taken to places that I hope to experience, and some that I never even knew were available. Do you really want your life to change? Change is scary sometimes because we don't know what's on the other side. And in the milieu of this attitude, we don't control it. In fact, I suggest people get rid of the word control. We don't control anything outside of ourselves or inside of ourselves. In the truest sense, control. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. I don't control that. The wind blows. The moon changes its shape. I wake up. I breathe. My heart beats. My blood circulates. I have no control over outside or inside of me. But I do have some responsibility to influence. Influence outside, influence inside. That's really connected to the serenity prayer. What can I influence? And I need wisdom. That's what this journey through the 12 steps gives us, wisdom. Wisdom comes from knowledge, but it also comes from making mistakes and correcting them and finding successful and effective corrections. That's what wisdom is. That's why young people don't have much wisdom. They haven't made enough mistakes and corrected them effectively. Middle-aged to later age people have made a lot of mistakes, and hopefully they've corrected them and their lives are better incrementally. As Bill says, progress, not perfection. Specifically, so many of us are poets or artists or just vague in our attempt to think about ourselves and our lives. The man who took me through the work the very first time in 1988, I was 4 years sober, he stressed specificity. Be specific about your resentments. Be specific about your amends. Be specific about your drinking experiences so that you can come to grips with powerlessness, and be specific in steps 2 and 3 so that you can come to grips with your agnosticism. An experience that I can describe at a different time, not relevant here. A word that's come to me in my meditation is, what is the invitation? It's a very broad net every morning. What is the invitation today? Or sometimes on the weekends, I'll spend a little more time in a broader perspective for a month or the year or for my life. Intentionally, I review my life in the fourth quarter of every year now. I started that about 5 years ago, looking at the following year as to what's the priorities. Bill has a great line in the 12 traditions, someplace, it might be in the 3rd tradition, I need to look that up, but it's the good may be the enemy of the best. Sounds a little tricky, sounds a little slick. It's not, it's profound. I have a lot of talents in a lot of areas, as each one of us do. We can do some really good things. We can make some wonderful contributions. But to the extent that I'm doing good things, I'm not doing the bullseye. I have 1 or 2 very specific competencies that are unique to me based on my background, my education, my genetics, whatever it is. To the extent that I'm doing good things, my energies are dissipated and I'm not focused on the best. The good may be the enemy of the best. A wonderful criteria litmus test to come up with your priorities. I heard a variation of it on that helps those out there. I know there's 30 or 40% of you that are perfectionists in not a healthy sense, in a neurotic sense. And I don't mean that as a judgment. I just mean that as an observation, evaluation. It's not healthy. That's what I mean by that. And it was the perfect may be the enemy of the best. The perfect may be the enemy of good enough. What is your invitation today? Let's be real specific. You've come here with an expectation. You've come here with an itch that you wanted to scratch. Just keep it really specific to yourself. What's that today? We start this whole program because of our suffering. Step 1 talks about being powerless, certainly over our substance and process addictions. The real point and the best kept secret in the rooms is that we're powerless over our lives, over reality. Bill calls it unmanageability. That's the human condition. That's the cancer of the spirit, to use a term from the Oxford group, the predecessor group to Alcoholics Anonymous. Those of you who have heard me talk in depth about step 1 know the distinctions I make of before the hyphen and after the hyphen. Addiction is about the problem that brings us the suffering that brings us to find a solution that's pretty rigorous. But once we get abstinent, not because we did anything, but because there were some preconditions of willingness, and then the gift of grace. The gift of grace. We don't earn it and we can't lose it. It's a mystery. I don't know why it comes and I don't know why it doesn't come. What is the connection between willingness and grace? I don't know. I know that I'm willing and I know that I've received the gift of grace. I don't know which came first, and quite frankly, it doesn't matter. I was taken to a place of willingness. Hear the grace of that. But I was willing to be taken. There's my contribution, my willingness. And Bill says on page 47, that's the cornerstone of a spiritual arch through which we walk to a new freedom. He has a great many poetic images, and that's one of the best ones, that spiritual arch through which we walk to a new freedom. Willingness is the one word I would use to capture the key to at least my success with my recovery, and that my life flourishes now. I told you, I think, that I was in a monastery for 7 years, 7 years of silence, studying to be a Catholic priest. I left because I didn't connect to an authentic spiritual life. I was in AA for 10 years before I ever understood steps 2 and 3 and had an experience with it. A decision about power, a decision about my concept of power. Ask yourself, what is it that you believe today, right now, here? What is it that you believe about a power other than yourself? We don't have to use spirit with a capital S. We don't have to certainly use the word God with a capital G. Those are totally arbitrary terms. They're synonyms for the concept that we can't put into words, because the reality underneath the concept is infinite, which is beyond the scope of our finite minds to even think about, to know about, and certainly to put into adequate words. But that's our challenge. What is your word or phrase for the power that you hope to connect to, or maybe already are connected to? And then in step 3, it's a decision for a relationship. That terminology is not in the big book, but it's absolutely implied on pages 62 and 63, where Bill talks about relationships. Director and actor, parent and child, employer, employee, maker and maid, principal and agent. He doesn't say relationship, but he gives us 5 examples. What relationship do you yearn for? This is a quick overview and build a necessary foundation, the stage 1 of the rocket launch. Bill talks about on page 25, rocketed into the 4th dimension, rocketed into the world of the spirit. That's what he's talking about, 4th dimension. The immaterial world, the world of the spirit, in contrast to the material world of the 3 dimensions, height, width, and depth. The 4th dimension, immaterial, immeasurable, invisible, the world of spirit. We don't know that it exists, but we're betting our life on that it does. This power other than ourselves. What relationship do you yearn for? Isn't that a wonderful word? Yearn. What relationship do you yearn for? If you have paper and a pen, I would love you to write down that one word or that phrase that comes to you, either because it's brand new right now, or it's the reinforcement of what you've already experienced. A relationship with power. There's no right or wrong decision, but it really is a decision to turn. Isn't that what Bill says on page 14 in his own story? Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant the destruction of self-centeredness. That's the issue with unmanageability, self-centeredness. If you have any doubt about that, read pages 60 to 62 in the book that talks about unmanageability and its nature, and the first paragraph on page 62 that talks about selfishness and self-centeredness, which is the root of the trouble. See, this is all important build-up to understand what step 4 is all about. He says, I must turn, on page 14, I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. We're filled with darkness. In steps 2 and 3, we make a decision to turn from our self-centeredness to other-centeredness, from the light, from the darkness to the light. On page 30, he nails step 1. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were powerless. On our own power, we're not effective. On our own power, we cannot deal effectively with our addiction if we're an addict. But even if we're not an addict, we're just a run-of-the-mill human being, we have this problem called unmanageability, selfishness and self-centeredness. Where self-will run riot, addicts just happen to be extreme examples of self-will run riot. He said, this is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people or presently maybe has to be smashed. Page 30. Powerful words. The delusion, meaning the lie, that we don't know that we believe even a lie. We really believe that we believe the truth. This is so relevant to step 4 because it smashes the lie, because it exposes the darkness to the light. The delusion that we are like other people, we're not normal. We never were normal. We are not currently normal. I don't care how much time you have in your recovery and how much abstinence you have. You're not normal. And then he says, or presently maybe. Awkward words, but what it means is I'm not normal and I never will be normal no matter what I do. I will never, once a pickle, always a pickle. You know the story, the cucumber and the pickle, right? I'm not going to repeat it right now. I don't want to take the time for it. We are not like other people, or presently maybe. The thought about that we will be normal at some point, that we will be okay at some point on our own power has to be smashed. These are not gentle. Page 14. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. The delusion has to be smashed. This is the whole approach to step 4. It's bringing a bulldozer into the depths of our unconscious to uncover the darkness and to give us freedom, to bring in the light. A decision for relationship, a decision for alignment. Alignment isn't in the big book in step 3, but it is the word I use for step 3. And it's crucial in steps 4 and 10 and 11. Those are all inventory steps. Step 4 is the mother of all inventories, of course. Maybe you do it once in a lifetime, maybe you do it once periodically, or maybe you do it just once a year. It doesn't make any difference, whatever your rhythm is, whatever your need is. But step 10 is a daily inventory. Spot check, it says in the 12 and 12, meaning on the spot when I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. A spiritual axiom. It's never them. Hello. It's never circumstances, and it's never them. If I'm disturbed, it's always me, because it's my perception and my reaction. It's my perception and it's my reaction, 100%. There's no exceptions. There's no exceptions. If I'm disturbed, oh, there's plenty of disturbing circumstances and people around us. Oh my goodness. It's never been so apparent to us, having been so isolated for a year and being very conscious of what's going on outside in the society and inside in our own family and inside even in my own self, because of the isolation and the time for reflection. If you took that time, and even if you didn't, you're very aware. Character defects on steroids. Lots of disturbing external circumstances and people, and yet they're just doing what they're doing. And if we take it personally, we get disturbed. And it's our perception, and it's our taking it personally, and it's our reaction that is the problem 100%. That was my very first spiritual awakening in 1988. I did the steps out of the book for the very first time. And when we got to the resentment inventory, there's 4 columns as I understand it today. I didn't understand it then, but this man gave me the 4th column instructions, and it changed my life. We'll see that here in a minute. But I'm going to invite you to pray this prayer of the 3rd step as our launching pad today, to begin taking a look at the major components of the 4th step and the major aspects of the resentment inventory. We won't look at the entire step 4 today, but we will look at resentment. And we won't look at it as deeply as I have in other times and would want to on an individual basis, but we're going to have a feel for it, a sense of it, the effectiveness of this tool. I'm inviting you to pray this 3rd step prayer, which has been brought up to date, eliminating the thys and the thous. It's on the screen. And again, you can pray it out loud, or you can pray it to yourself, or you don't have to pray it at all, but be willing to be in alignment with reality. If you're out of alignment with reality, you will suffer. If you're in alignment with reality, you will flourish. But here and now, bring to your mind your decision in step 2. What is this power other than yourself deep down in you, this sunlight of the spirit? What is it for you personally? What relationship does your very soul yearn for with this source of light deep down inside of you? And in the decision that it is, and the belief that it is, and the hope that it is, let's act as if we really mean it and pray this prayer of consent. A consent to be brought into alignment, knowing that I can't bring myself into alignment. I can be willing to be in alignment, and I can take some action to be in alignment, but I can't bring it across the goal line. I need a power other than myself, a collaboration, a cooperation, a communication, a coordination with my Creator. This is a prayer of consent. Please join me. God, I offer myself to you to build with me and to do with me as you wish. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of your power, your love, and your way of life. May I do your will always. You see, being in alignment and committing to the third step is not passive. Look at that line. May I do your will always. With my free will, I am deciding to be in alignment with my understanding of reality, my understanding of God's will for me today. With my free will, I am making a ferocious decision to turn and to be turned, to be in alignment with my understanding of the truth. This is the proper use of the will, as he says in step 10. This is the proper use of the mind, as he says in step 10. At the very end on page 85, the proper use of the mind is to create my vision of God's will. The proper use of the will is to, in fact, use my willpower and all that it takes to be in alignment with that vision. We've come here because we suffered. Pathetic Herbie, a victim of circumstances and people in the jail. I even understood that it was the bondage of self intellectually, but I did not understand what that meant. I was in the bondage of addiction, the first half of the first step, and I was in the bondage of self, the second half of the first step. The first part, the addiction, was removed without my request. I don't understand it to this day. I didn't go to a 12-step program for 2 or 3 months after alcohol was removed because I was willing to support her recovery, my wife's recovery, by stopping my drinking for the 90 days that she would be in recovery, and I haven't had a drink since. I went to AA 3 months later, and 4 years later, I did the steps out of the book. I don't recommend that time frame. Bill says we walk through a spiritual arch to a new freedom. Well, it's a wonderful metaphor. You may not have ever seen a sort of an architectural drawing of it. If there is an arch through which we walk to a new freedom, I'm assuming that the Bill had in mind that the foundation was step 1, complete defeat. That's where surrender is. I am defeated by my addiction. I am defeated by my life. Those two halves of the first step. And surrender is a progressive experience. In 1988, I saw the problem of the body. I had been 4 years sober because I thought I was an alcoholic because of the drama in my life. Drama doesn't make us an alcoholic. What makes us an addict is that we have a defective body, according to the doctor's opinion. He says we have something that looks like an allergy. Once I start, I cannot stop. Now, Bill makes his comments on the mind problem of obsession and delusion. Once I stop, I cannot stay stopped. First half of the first step. There's only 2 components that make me an addict. Once I start, I cannot stop. Once I stop, I cannot stay stopped. I saw the body part in 1988. I saw the mind part in 1991. Saw it and understood it, but had an experience with it. That's the key, is to have an experience deep down inside based on my specific history. And then 10 years later, at 10 years of sobriety, I saw the unmanageability, a progressive surrender, a progressive experience of defeat. And then at 10 years, I was defeated sufficiently and thought out sufficiently that I could see that step 2 was a decision about God. Page 53, God is or God isn't, an act of faith. A decision with no knowledge, no certitude, no feeling, no emotion. It's merely a decision. Bill calls it the cornerstone. In step 3, that decision for alignment, he calls the keystone. The next time he mentions the spiritual arch through which we walk to a new freedom is on page 75 in step 5. He says, now we've walked through the arch. He doesn't tell us how we built it. So I'm assuming that step 4, resentment, is part of the building block. Step 4, fear, is part of the building block. Step 4, sex, inventory, is part of the building block. I've added to it dishonesty and secrets, because I do believe those are implied both in the big book in step 4 and 5, as well as the 12 and 12. The word secrets, I don't believe are used, but they're certainly implied, shining the light into the darkness. This is the whole point. I'm a big believer in context. That's why I'm taking so long to kind of set us up to take a look at this tool for freedom. That's the word, freedom. The point of step 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 is freedom from the darkness, freedom from the obstacles and the impediments in us to the light. Think of sunlight of the Spirit as the image, the sunlight of the Spirit deep down inside of us. Well, why don't I have a connection with that sunlight? Well, because I have clouds in me that shade the sunlight from me. And as the clouds dissipate and are removed, the sunlight is revealed and is able to shine in me, to me, and then eventually, as we know in steps 10, 11, and 12, through me, to shine on the path for others. You see, Bill talks about this ego deflation at depth, and we have to know what our story is. What is my story? Well, I have a biology. Each one of us is completely unique as our fingerprint, as unique as our DNA. There never has been, there currently isn't, and there never will be another you. This is really important to know. You are correct. You are unique. Not unique as special in the sense of entitled or exempt, but unique in terms of different than anybody else. The good news is that you have some talents and some ability to contribute based on your family and your culture, your experiences and your emotions, your education and your psychological orientations. One of my teachers calls it the core of goodness. You'll notice that these all look alike. You might even make a connection to the Russian dolls. I think they call them nesting dolls that you see in gift stores. And they all fit into one another. This is us. We have different personas that have accumulated over time, starting with our biology and our birth. And then the accumulation of the Hollywood storefront that we created as a survival mechanism. A Hollywood storefront. It's the mask, it's the persona, it's the projection that we want people to see so that we'll get what we want, whatever that is, respect or honor or money or riches or relationship. But it's all built on a lie. So the whole point is to deflate this ego at depth, to identify and remove these false selves, these masks, to find out who the real me is, what the truth is, to blow up the lie so that I can see the truth, to deconstruct the false self. We built a wall to protect ourselves. That's a survival mechanism. We built a wall to protect ourselves. And it does that for a while until the wall becomes our prison. And that wasn't what we intended, and most of us don't even know it. Step 4 is making a searching and fearless moral inventory of our values, of our beliefs, of our motives, so that we can in fact find the true self. to identify and to analyze the various forms of self-centeredness I mentioned on page 62. Bill talks about selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of the trouble. Well, the fruit of the root is resentment. That's a manifestation. He talks about it in the 12 and 12, instincts gone awry. Instincts gone awry. Some of you have had biology or physiology or maybe even psychology where it talked about instincts. These are survival instincts of fight, flight, and freeze. They get translated, they get translated into our emotions of anger and fear and dishonesty. Fight, flight, freeze, fight, anger, flight, fear, freeze, camouflage, dishonesty, secrets, especially in the area of sex. Those first three items are the major components in step 4 in the big book. As I mentioned, dishonesty and secrets are my words to capture some of the indications, implications in the big book. I put guilt and shame because of my background, exposed to fairly sophisticated psychology. And today, those words are part of our culture, part of our understanding. Guilt, a negative feeling about my behavior. Shame, a negative feeling about my very being. I'm talking about unhealthy guilt and unhealthy shame. There is healthy guilt and healthy shame, but we're talking here about the unhealthy part. Bill uses a different model in the 12 and 12. He uses the model of the 7 capital sins. I don't use it, but I bring it to your attention because some people find it quite helpful. Step 4 in the 12 and 12. And he explores it a little bit. It's a very Catholic model coming, I believe, out of his exposure to Father Ed Dowling, a Jesuit priest, who he engaged as his spiritual director from 1940 to 1960 when Father Ed Dowling died. And they became really good friends, and Ed Dowling was his spiritual director. So Bill was exposed to some of those models and ideas and vocabulary, and he included it in the 12 and 12. I don't use it. I use the model from the big book. So I look at resentment and we make a list. That's what he says. It's very simple. Put down right now, if you have a pen and paper, one resentment that you have. Just one. It doesn't matter whether it's big or small, as long as it's current. This is a current anger that you have, a current feeling. Resentment comes from the Latin sentire, to mean to feel. RE means to feel it again and again. Making a list of resentments. Some people have 5 and some people have 50 and some people have 500. It doesn't make any difference, but I help people shape it to about 20 so that they are not overwhelmed with the list of work and that it's doable. I have a philosophy of what will you do, what can you do? Bill asks us to name the reasons that you have that resentment. I had a resentment toward my father because of A through Z. So many things. He was an alcoholic, a practicing alcoholic, and with all of the drama, the chaos, and the suffering that came from that, not physical, emotional, verbal abuse, etc., and lots of other dysfunctional things. That's not important to go into the reasons. I had a major in 1988 when I'm doing this work for the first time out of the book, a resentment toward a colleague of mine. Those of you who have been exposed to me know about Bob, who tried to get me fired. All right. I have a resentment. I had a resentment toward Bob, number 1, because he tried to get me fired, number 2. And what was my belief? All right. That was column 3. Now, at that time, in 1988, I didn't get very good instructions on that. So I did a checkbox thing and I don't get any experience from a checkbox because it's it's routine, it's rote. And there's no thought, there's no consciousness, there's no experience that goes with it. But I had a powerful experience with the fourth column, my responsibility. I'm going to talk about both of those in a summary fashion here in a minute. But for me, this is the outline of the resentment inventory. The fear and the sex and the dishonesty inventories will be done next month. As you know, I'm doing this path toward freedom, which is the step of the month: January, step 1, February, step 2, March, step 3, April, step 4. But I split it. Resentments this month and the balance of the step 4 next month. I'm also doing a series, which many of you know about, on topics, a much deeper dive. This is dedicated, at least in the schedule, to an hour and a half. Typically, we take an extra hour to have Q&A. But it's a short overview. The monthly series on topics is a 3-hour deep dive. And last month I did a deep dive into the resentments, and this month I'll do a deep dive into the balance of it. And all of these are recorded, edited, and placed on YouTube, or at least placed on the Retreat Center's website for a while, because all of this is a fundraiser for them. And so what do we mean by column 3? And Bill doesn't refer to it as column 3, but on page 65 in the big book, he has this matrix that shows column 1, the names, column 2, the reasons, and then column 3, some words. He doesn't use the term belief. He just has some words there about self-esteem and pride and etc. There are 7 words that he uses that I use and have constructed a worksheet. I'm not going over the worksheet today. But ask yourself here, all right, so you have a resentment and you've put it down on paper, I hope, and what they did to you that made you angry. So put yourself on a stage with that person. This is a technique that one of the people who came out of the Denver Fellowship of the Spirit gave us as a very concrete way of developing an experience with this approach. And Bill Wilson loved the theater, the actor, the stage, the drama. He loved all of that as a metaphor or analogy for having knowledge and insight. The key to the breaking the code, as I call it, for column 3 is self-esteem. It's not the psychological self-esteem, low self-esteem, high self-esteem. It's hard to lose that, but it's really asking yourself, who am I? Who do I believe that I am? I'm on a stage with Bob. He's confronting me. We're co-workers, we're equals, we're peers in the system, and he wants to get me fired. Well, who do I believe that I am? I believe I'm a superior employee, that I'm a very talented salesperson and sales manager, which I was talented, but I thought I was the best the company had, and actually the best in the entire city. I mean, a little bit grandiose. That's an understatement. But I had never seen my beliefs and how corrupt they were. Who do I believe others are? So when I have Bob on a stage and I'm looking at Bob and I'm asking myself, who am I? I'm also asking, well, who do I believe he is? All right. I believe he's one down. I believe he's inferior. I believe he's jealous. All right. I have no reason to come to those conclusions, except that's my fantasy about it. Others were always more than or less than me, never just different. And I didn't know that I didn't know that. How about life? You want an easy way to find your beliefs? Listen to when you think or feel or say should. Anytime you think or feel or say should, stop, pause, and hold it up to the light and look at it. Just ask yourself, is it true? Mothers should love children. Is that your experience? My mother should have loved me. I have a resentment because she didn't. See, I have this expectation because I'm not looking at the reality. My mother was not capable of loving me. She had her own addiction. She had her own family of origin issues and trauma. She had a difficult marriage. Whatever the explanation is, we're not looking at excuses, but we're looking at the contrast of my expectation and reality. Fathers should love and model manly behavior for their sons. Well, that wasn't my experience, so I resented my father. But he was not capable of doing that. That's not an excuse, it's an observation. But I had an expectation that he be different than he was. There's the key. My should is saying, I want reality to be different than it is. And it's not fair. There's no such thing as not fair. It just is. Reality just is. If you get nothing out of this conversation but that one thing, it'll change your lives. Reality has principles. Think about physics for a minute and the law of gravity. Gravity just is. Maybe we don't even know what it is, but I'm not a physicist or a scientist of any kind. But I believe in gravity. If I drop a pen 100 times it's going to go to the floor. I don't understand that, and it doesn't bother me that I don't understand that. It's just the reality, and I accept that, so I don't drop my pen. Physics is a science of principles of material behavior, material reality. Gravity is one of those principles. It's immutable. What that means is it doesn't change. It's not negotiable, meaning it doesn't matter what I know, think, feel, or want. Gravity will operate. If I jump off a 30-story building wanting to fly, I will die because gravity has no investment in what I think or feel or want or do. It just is. And it's not personal. Oh my God. Reality is not personal. People are doing what they do not to get in my way, not to be a frustration to me, not to be an obstacle to me. They're just doing what they do. Circumstances are what circumstances are. Volcanoes erupt and earthquakes disturb the earth, and mental illness creates genocide. It's just what is. We think that reality is changeable if I try harder. We think that reality is negotiable if I just whine enough. Or we take it personally. They're doing it to me. No, they're not. This victim mentality, it's a sickness. Oh, many of us have been victimized. I'm not dismissing reality. There are tragic circumstances, unfortunate circumstances. There are even criminal circumstances. That is all true, all true, all true. We were victimized, but today we're not a victim. Today, I cannot change the history that I have. I cannot change my own personal history, my family of origin. I can't change any of what happened to me. all I can do is acknowledge and accept and adjust. That's the triple A of transformation. Acknowledge what happened. Accept it as true. Not right or wrong, just what is. And adjust to it. At age 18 or 21, whatever the legal age in your mind is for adulthood, at that point, you're responsible. You don't have a part in your resentment. Please hear this. You do not have a part in your resentment. You have the whole thing, 100%. People and circumstances don't make you angry. Your perception of, interpretation of, and reaction to is what makes you angry. Now, I have a column 3 worksheet in my Way of Life document that I went over in detail last month in the workshop. You're welcome to go to YouTube and find that. We're not going to do that today. Bill talks about deep resentments. I had one for my father, and he gives us a prayer practice on pages 66 and 67 to identify our deep resentments. I had 80 resentments, and when I identified the deep ones, there might have been 8. And it says, begin a prayer practice to have them removed. Well, the implication is that I'm as powerless over my deep resentment as I am over alcohol. Please hear this. Again, if you don't get anything else out of this journey with us today, then this prayer practice, it will set you free. Not on its own. I'm assuming that you'll do column 3 and column 4 and work with a sponsor to be able to identify and break the code so that you see the truth and not the lie, because we get stuck like quicksand in our story. And we can't get out of our story because it's part of our warp and woof. It's part of our DNA. It's part of our cellular structure until we get healed from it. And believe me, you can get healed from it and recover from it. And the hot iron of the spirit will smooth out the wrinkles in our personality. Prayer for the removal. And if you want freedom from this deep resentment, I prayed that prayer every day for the removal of the resentment that I had toward my father. I was not praying for my father. Please hear the difference. The big book's instructions on page 66 and 67 is not a prayer for them. It's a prayer for ourselves, a prayer for healing, a prayer that invites the divine surgeon to surgically remove from me the cancer of this resentment. Please, Holy Spirit, come and remove this cancer of anger and resentment and sadness and grief and regret and remorse, whatever the words are. And I prayed it every day for 3 months before anything changed. I had 8 resentments. I prayed 8 prayers. Some people take it one at a time. I didn't. I did it all at once. The prayer, 8 prayers every day. At about 3 months, one of them was removed. And I prayed 7 prayers every day. And then one was removed and I prayed 6. And you can feel the snow melting in the springtime sunlight. And here's the really good news. Not only were they permanently removed, they were removed and never returned. They were removed that day, that time period. And the next time I did inventory, there was not even a hint of mint. The prayer practice that I have, it changes perhaps every time I touch it because I have different thoughts about different words, different approaches. It's in my Way of Life document on my website. But the real key, from my standpoint, and the first spiritual awakening I ever had, was to take a look at what I call column 4. It's the second paragraph on page 67 that concludes the resentment inventory. And there are 5 questions here, all about about my self-centeredness. What am I thinking? Selfish. Where am I selfish, it says. He doesn't give us a definition. I arbitrarily define selfish as thinking about myself. My motives were to protect myself. My motives were to get a promotion. My motives were to look good. Always unhealthy. What am I doing? Self-seeking. Bill uses those 2 terms, selfish and self-seeking. He doesn't tell us what they mean. I make a definition for them because I want to be practical and I want to be specific. Selfish is when I'm thinking about myself. Self-seeking is when I'm acting on my own behalf. What am I doing? I'm manipulating my bosses. I'm abusing my coworkers. I'm inappropriately delegating and dishonest with my subordinates. I had never seen any of that misbehavior on my part. I thought I was a Renaissance man, and as it turns out, I'm a Neanderthal. What is my fear? I had so many fears. The fear of losing my job, the fear of not getting promoted, the fear of not being recognized, the fear of public humiliation, the fear of being dismissed by a woman. I mean, I didn't even know that I was so riddled with fears. These are in the 4th column of the resentment inventory, which gives me a sense of why I'm defending myself with my resentment. Where am I dishonest? I thought I was an honest person. And yet I was cheating on my expense account. I mean, it couldn't get any more dishonest. I'm a thief, let alone in the more subtle psychological dishonesties in my relationships. And I had lists and lists and lists of dishonesty. The final question is about my responsibility. Bill uses terms like my fault and other words that I actually don't relate to anymore. Maybe in 1939 they were good words. So I use a word that's not in the big book. What is my responsibility? What is my perception? What is my reaction? What is my feeling? All coming from inside of me that's creating this resentment. I'm holding this resentment because I blame them and I don't take responsibility. I'm a victim and therefore, don't you know, feel sorry for me. I can swim in my self-pity. Will you join me? I have a worksheet that takes you deeply into that, as well as some other aspects in preparation for steps, the fear inventory, as well as steps 6 and 7. Again, I'm not going to go through, I'm not going to go through that. Having difficulty with my slides. But the key is to take a look at motives. Comes from the Latin word movere, what moves us. What moves us? Now, sometimes it's a cattle prod, a hot poker at the back, that I'm trying to reduce suffering or I'm running from some type of threat for survival purposes. Or maybe it's a carrot, something that's leading me forward. My motive is I want the reputation. My motive is I want the money. My motive is I want the power. The motive is I want the recognition. Most of it's corrupt. In the 3rd column, that was about my beliefs, which are the lie. And in the 4th column, it's about the truth, my motives. I didn't know that I didn't know. until I cracked the code, the curtain was parted and the light began to shine in. I thought I was a victim of my addiction or of my family of origin, or if I'd married better, or if I'd worked for better people, or if I'd gone to a better monastery. None of that was true. It was a story to protect me from taking responsibility for my life, because when I took responsibility for my life, this was the freedom that I found. Now notice here, Herbie, pathetic Herbie, is still in jail if he has the bars in front of his face because he can't see reality around him. The reality is there's no ceiling, there's no walls, there's no floor. I need to drop the bars. There's a book by Hazelton out called Drop the Rock, which is about step 6 and 7. It's the same concept. Freedom is in my hands. Not that I have the power to do it. It's very clear in the resentment inventory. I covered that a little bit. And that is the prayer for the removal of deep resentments. I'm as powerless over my resentment removal as I am over my addiction. I hope you hear that. It's right in the big book, page 66. You can find that sentence. It says it that explicitly. I'm as powerless over my deep resentments as I am over my addiction. No power at all. I need power. I need help from the power other than me. But he also alludes to it in the fear inventory. We'll see that when we get there next month. And in the sex inventory. I'm as powerless over removing and changing my fears as I am over my addiction. I am as powerless over knowing what to do in my sex life, as well as, even if I know what to do, I don't have the power to do it on a consistent basis, and I need power from the outside. I need power from the other than myself. I need the power that is available to me if in fact I have removed and cooperated in the removal of, here the cooperation, here the coordination, here the collaboration of those obstacles and clouds and impediments in me. We need to identify and analyze my terms in the 4th step. The obstacles to power, the clouds in us to the sunlight. The root cause is self-centeredness, but we can't look at that and see it. So we look at behavior. We look at our resentments, our feelings, and the behaviors that come with it. We look at our fears and the behaviors that come with it. We look at our sex and our behaviors that come with it. And we look at our feet in order to get to our heart. We can see our feet directly. And because we have a mind that knows and can analyze and can reflect, we can get to our heart and see our beliefs and see our corruption and see our delusions and see our lies and see our beliefs and see our shoulds and see all of the ramifications of that create our dishonesty and our shield that protects us from ourselves even. This work penetrates the unconscious. Freud said, the work of human nature, the work of human beings, is to make the unconscious conscious. Otherwise, we end up as perennial victims of predestination or the malevolence of other people's ill will. Brilliant statement. Until we see the truth, we will believe the lie and we will suffer. But the truth will set us free. As one of my good friends says, at first, however, it will really be uncomfortable. One of the images I like to have you look at in terms of this column 3, column 4 business is some of us wear glasses, and to the extent that they're ground correctly, we can see reality. We can see at least the reality around us more clearly. Column 3 and column 4 are the grinding of the lenses to give us a clearer perception of reality. We will never see reality as it is. We cannot see objective reality because we're subjective. We're always processing it through our lenses. Our eyes have lenses, our glasses are lenses, and that's what processes. We can only see what our lenses process. If I had brown lenses, I would see brown. I wouldn't know that I'm seeing brown because that's all I see. It's through which I see. I don't see that through which I'm looking. What I see in reality typically is a projection of who I am. This is basic psychology. We do not see reality as it is, we see reality as we are. And the clearer our lenses are about who we are, the clearer will be our translation of people and circumstances and relationships. The whole point of this is the freedom to see reality more like it is rather than like we are. To identify our own expectations. One of the primary theses or principles in the book Forgive for Good by Fred Luskin on forgiveness is that we suffer because we have unenforceable rules. You should, I should, they should, the world should. All of those shoulds are rules that we have that we don't even know that we have because we've absorbed them from our culture, from our religion, from our family of origin, from our education, and from our experiences. And we need to unpack and identify all of that to kind of like sift through to get to the truth to stop the suffering. I'm going to stop here.
I had a traumatic experience this week with my sponsor. I did my resentment list and she went through it with me. And my question is, what is the role of the sponsor?
In the fifth step?
Yeah, because, and if I could just say contextually, I was telling her about my sexual assault and she was telling me what my responsibility or my part was in it.
Did you ask her?
Well, that's what I thought, that we were supposed to do those 5 columns, like why I had the resentment.
Well, wait. I'm going to answer your question and then make a comment. I want this to be a dialogue, but I want also to make it a dialogue. And that is, from my understanding of a fifth step, is the person who is hearing the fifth step listens. They don't talk. It's not a teaching moment. It's not a parenting moment. It's not a sponsor moment. It's not a step guide moment. It's a witness to your life, and they listen. There might be a little discussion, perhaps. My proportion is arbitrary, but it's 90% the person giving the fourth step reads their fifth step. And maybe up to 10% is comments by the person who's hearing it, mostly for clarification, but not for teaching.
Ah.
And certainly not for therapy.
Well, that's good to know, because that's not what happened. And it was very...
Well, that's what I'm hearing. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. And there's no training camp for sponsors. So God bless her for taking the time to listen to you. And but okay. I don't want to get too tangled in the fifth step because that's going to be down the road a little bit, if you don't mind.
That's fine. And you answered my question and have given me a lot of comfort so I can move on from experience. Thank you.
Yeah, the fourth and fifth step are such a sacred time that I'm hoping you find what you're looking for there. Great, thank you.
My question relates to when you were talking about the deep resentments in the prayer practice.
Yeah.
I have a deep resentment that I can acknowledge, and I can accept as true, like you were talking about your coworker, I can accept this resentment towards this person, that my reality and my expectation of what she should do is not real. And I can accept that. I have not gotten relief from this resentment for a very long time. I occasionally, and I've been doing this resentment prayer every morning. I occasionally have a momentary, oh, okay, she's not that bad, like a momentary soft spot. And then I can get right back to the resentment again once I start, festering it over in my head. And I'm still struggling with it. So what I got from this was that I think you said it took about 3 months for one of yours, and I don't know how long this one will take, but I did hear that the freedom and the removal of this will come through prayer practice. And so in your experience, is it just that I just need this deep resentment just needs more prayer practice for it to go away?
Well, maybe, but at the same time, it's really important that you do a effective third and fourth column so that you know where the resentment's coming from. Because praying for it to be removed, if in fact you haven't identified you as the source of it, is not going to be very effective. At the same time, I moved on to steps 8 and 9 as I was finishing the step work, praying those prayers over that 3-month period. So I'm not sure, as you're talking, I'm not sure if part of the relief didn't come because I actually got involved in steps 8 and 9, and I was making some amends even to those people, or at least to other people, and somehow my spirit softened up. But the key that I'm hearing from you personally is that you need to probably get more connected to third and fourth column, your beliefs and your motives, to see what perhaps is amiss in those areas. Because generating the resentment and being so invested, as I heard even in your tone of voice, that it's probably because you haven't cracked it open to see, oh my God, I'm the source of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a critical question. All right. Column 3 and column 4. And I use the term, as you know, breaking the code. And it takes a bit. It took a lot of effort on my step guide's part, meeting with me several different times to go over the same material before I could I finally see that I didn't see the truth of all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah.
I want to thank you today for the AAA, because this is just great. You may have been victimized but victim mentality is a sickness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I'm the perpetual victim. I really am.
Well, look at our culture, for God's sakes. It's a pandemic.
Oh, yeah. Oh, everybody's been set upon by everybody else. And it's so, it's like, wow, get over yourself.
Actually,
get over yourself.
Actually, I say that to some of my more seasoned sponsees. It's a bit cold to say to anybody who doesn't know you that well.
Yeah, really, because, they're just going to get angry at you for it.
Yeah, well, that's their problem, not mine.
It is. So thanks, because acknowledge what happened, accept it as true, and adjust to it. And I added, because after all, it's already happened.
Yeah.
You're not going to go back and change it.
Yeah.
Reality, there's no time machine here.
Yeah.
Right. All there is your reaction to it. And I've always loved your remark that at first I was like, well, come on, man. Now let's be realistic here. But you're saying, oh, if you find you're disturbed, right? It's all on you. What part is the resentment? Do you have in the resentment? You don't have a part in the resentment, as you like to say. The whole thing is yours.
Yeah. Yeah. It's shocking at first. And then there's such freedom in it, because if it's all mine, then I can get released from it by taking some actions to be released from it. Notice I'm avoiding saying I can release myself. Yeah, I can't do that, but I can participate in a process of being released.
And I'm going to be interested in the next one of these. We're going to be looking at fear, right?
Right.
Yeah, because underlying these resentments, there's fear, is what I'm discovering.
For different people have different primary dynamics. Some people are primarily anger-based, some are
Yeah.
fear-based, and some are shame-based. And so, yes, you may find the core of your reactions as fear. I know the core of my reactions is shame.
See, and being a human being, I'm thinking, well, if that's what it is for me, that's what it is for everybody else.
I know.
I heard a lot of great things, but one of the things is you said it's never circumstances, it's never them, it's my perception and my reaction.
Yes.
And while I totally get that, I think I have a hard time with the perception part and it's not because I don't think it's my perception, it's because I have a hard time seeing like what's my fault, you know what I mean? And I guess I think part of it is,
Wait. Yeah, I get it. I have this conversation a million times. All right. Yeah. Whose anger is it?
it's definitely my anger.
Do we need to continue the conversation?
Well, I guess,
Wait. Whose anger is it?
yeah, like I get it.
It's 100% your anger, which is your reaction based on your perception.
Yeah.
See, if I see brown, then I'm going to react to brown. I don't know that it's my glasses that are brown, the lenses through which I'm looking. You should treat me with respect. And you didn't. And you should, because that's the right thing to do. And by the way, I'm eminently respectable in my delusion. All right.
Yeah.
And I don't get to tell you how to behave. In fact, I'm not even actually seeing how you behave. I'm seeing how I interpret your behavior. And of course, I'm a mind reader and a soul reader at the same time, not knowing that I'm not. So that's what I mean by perception.
Yeah, I guess the part that I find the challenging part is like when you grow up and you learn.
Yep.
You're told what your perceptions are, right? Like it's the malignant narcissism thing.
Well, we can give it lots of different names, but you're right on the money. That is correct. And we need to do corrective reconditioning. That is correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of women grow up to be dependent on men because that's how they were trained. And when the man isn't dependable, they get all right. Or when the man grows up and the woman is supposed to be subordinate and dependent, and she's not, the man gets all, but it's all, how about dealing with reality? And there's that balance between my independence and my interdependence. And there's that emotional sobriety that Bill says is so elusive.
Yeah, and I really liked last time you talked about a sounding board to get at the reality.
Yes.
And how important that is, because that's where I have the hard time is finding out.
It was critical for me. A sounding board, meaning a sponsor, a step guide, a therapist, a spiritual director, a good friend, a spouse, intimacy. All of those things are sources of sounding boards. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Oh, no, it's a great conversation. And I don't mean to ever say that this is easy stuff. Like, oh, I hear your explanation. I get it now. Yeah, no, that's probably not how it's going to work. It's going to work like this, where you have conversations and you challenge it and you go, well, I think I understand, but I don't connect to it. That's what you were saying. and maybe now you connect a little bit more, and work with somebody who perhaps has some experience with this third and fourth column in-depth review, and it'll probably bring you to the goal line.
I guess I think she may have been touching on the same thing. Where is my anger really coming from?
That's correct.
So I think I'm understanding it's more about my expectation not being met, my view of reality that I think.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. Because I was just wondering that why I'm so quick to anger, with little things, sometimes big things, but sometimes just little things. And, maybe it's somebody saying the wrong thing to me, like not respecting, as you suggested.
Yeah.
But so that's what's really driving this anger is our perception, our individual perception.
And expectation. That is correct. And belief. And we're all trained to believe certain things. And a whole bunch of it's just a lie.
Yeah. Okay. So if I may, that sort of leads me into the second phase of this question. Then, because you talked a lot about reality, and we can't know objective reality because we're looking through these glasses subjectively.
Yes.
How do we ever really get to reality?
We don't ever.
We don't ever.
No. And in fact, I'm not a scientist or have done any credible work in that area, but I read stuff. And the scientists actually say that when they scientifically look at something through a microscope or a telescope, it changes the thing they're looking at.
Yeah, that's a principle of observation, right? Yeah.
I don't know what it is. That's a great term, and maybe that's correct, but that's startling because even looking at it changes it.
Yes, correct.
And so, but the real point is that I will never know reality as it is, but I can get closer. And you know how I know I'm closer? Is when I'm in alignment and there's a flow in my life. Because in fact, when there's trouble in my life, here, watch my hands. Look at my hands. I'm across reality. And the turning of step 3 and the process of turning of steps 4 through 9 is to turn me to be in alignment with reality. When I'm disturbed, I'm out of alignment. The whole point of step 10 is to be in alignment. The whole step of 4 through 9 is to be turned to be in alignment with reality as it's manifesting.
Okay, but if we don't know, if again we're still looking through these clouded lenses, we're just making attempts to align ourselves to reality. And
when your attempts are not effective is when you're suffering.
Okay. And then we're suffering, and to correct that, we could use our sponsor or our advisor or somebody, a sounding board.
What does the 10 steps say? Number 1, we pray.
Right.
Number 2, we talk to somebody. Number 3, we make an amends if we've created harm. And number 4, we turn our thoughts to helping somebody else. A very specific formula for dealing with our reality. As a human being, I'm built to know what's going on and to contribute to the environment around me. Yeah, that's how we're built. Steps 11 and 12.
Follow those steps. Very good.
Yeah, no, it's that's why I'm so passionate and have dedicated my life actually to this work, is because it's a magic formula, and it's like not really understood even in the rooms.
And that's the only thing, not to be too critical, but you get under a sponsor, and I guess someone else said it. That's why you move on, I guess, and find other people.
Yeah, because it's possible to outgrow your sponsor. You can keep them as a friend, but you need somebody who is an objective sounding board, and maybe a challenge for you to grow and stretch to more match the model of the sounding board.
not always easy to find either. So
More and more difficult as you get more mature and evolve. That's correct. That is correct. Yeah.
thank you.
I went outside the program to have what I consider my primary sounding board as a spiritual director.
Someone faith-based.
Not so much faith-based as a deeply rooted spiritual person. Yes, they are faith-based, but that's not the issue. They're just deeply evolved as a human being. I still have a sponsor. Yeah.
It's in the program, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I think what we're talking about here is growth and the awareness and,
Yeah.
a new pair of glasses, which is so awesome. I have a question for you, because some of my emotional sobriety disturbances transfer over to work.
You bet.
And from fear, my internal core is fear. And and that relates to losing control of something. In business, I'm paid to control things, but sometimes my perception of things, I will set myself up to react because I'm not tightening things up front, trying to be nice, and then things don't go the way I want them. My expectations are not met, the resentment set in, and then I react sometimes to that. So I'm thinking I need to really tighten those things up so that things can go a little better on the other side.
Or maybe not tighten things up. Maybe loosen things up.
Well, for me, definitely. But my question is this: can you expound a little bit more on the subjective? I wrote it down here. The subjective versus the objective, because that was kind of a key for me. Is what you said is it was a psychology 101 thing. You said the way we look at things subjectively, not objectively. Was that what it was?
Yeah, I mean, and there's no alternative to that. But
yeah, and with me, what happens is my cutting edge discernment, gets in the way up here, and that's where the struggle starts.
Maybe it doesn't get in the way, because I love the word discernment. It's $100 word, very sophisticated word that means I'm thinking in the milieu of prayer. Discernment connotes that I'm thinking in the milieu of prayer. So I'm asking for guidance in my thinking. That's discernment. And that, I believe, is our responsibility. That's why we meditate in the morning, is to get that guidance. That was the original Oxford group, the predecessor group to AA. Reason for doing meditation in the morning was to get guidance for the day and or guidance for their life. But
indeed, and so when I use the discernment biblically in my walk with God, and when I do that, it certainly clears up a lot of stuff. What I'm doing, though, in my mind is I'm transferring my discernment to business.
Well, of course you would. Wait, when you say transfer, what do you mean? I mean, life.
Well,
is
then my perception of something happening, which may or may not be happening, because my job is to prevent things from happening.
That's your job, and so you operate on principles, right?
Right, exactly.
But see, the principles are. You could use the term spiritual, or you could use the term universal, or you could use the term human, or you could use the term physics. Principles are principles are principles. That's just reality. And it doesn't change when you're sitting in your meditation practice thinking about helping people, or at your work thinking about how to get your job done. There are principles there. So when you're working with people, there's the principle of discipline and accountability, as well as kindness and respect. When I'm dealing with the people I try to help, the first question I ask is, what's the principle in the situation you find yourself? And then once they sort of sort that out in discernment, what the principle is, then I say, use the principle and always take the high road. And they go, do we always have to take the high road? And I go, no, you don't. But you do have to accept the consequences of going the low road.
So maybe I'm not being as principled and disciplined as I maybe should in the contract, and therefore I'm not acting kind enough. If I would be a little bit more principled and disciplined, I can find a better way to be kind, maybe.
Yeah, and drop the word should. What? How principled do you want to be?
Well, to a principled point, I need to be. That's
I
part of
want
what
to
I
be, I need to be, because that's going to put me in the best shape to be helpful. Have you read the book New Pair of Glasses?
Oh yeah, I love it. It was amazing.
Well, that's where I got the image, a new pair of glasses. And his mantra is, how can I help you do what you need to get done? And all of his relationships cleared up.
Yeah, indeed. That was a big key in understanding what I was doing and why I was drinking.
Yeah. And one of my teachers says this, and so you asked the question about, well, in my spiritual life I do this, but in my work life I do that, and it's kind of like, yeah, there's no difference. He says, what we do in any one place, we do every place. It's quite confrontational.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I do that.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you. I think the key word there for me was principles and disciplines, and
Yeah.
I think I was missing that.
Well, and I'm going to play off another word then, because Bill said there are only two disciplines in the 12-step fellowship. There's only two disciplines. One is God and one is alcohol. You're either going for one or you're going for the other. There's no in between. You're either going toward the light or you're going toward the darkness.
Yeah,
You talk about confrontational. It's kind of like, oh.
Yeah, indeed.
What I struggle with is letting go completely and having that.
What does it
full
even
trust.
mean? Wait. What does it even mean? I don't use that words. Letting go. I don't let go of anything.
Yeah, I suppose it's trusting, I think.
Oh, that's very different. Yeah. Trusting is good. What does it mean?
Trusting that I'm going to be okay, or trusting that
That would be naive.
yeah, I don't know. It's trust that I can I don't know. I have a good sounding board. I have a really good objective sponsor, and I have a really good therapist, and I have a really good spiritual guide.
Wonderful.
But it's like I don't have the full trust there yet.
Well, what does it mean? And from my standpoint, faith is a decision. Belief is acceptance that my decision is in fact reality, and trust is the translation of all of that into my behavior. Trust is my acting as if my decision was based on reality. God is deep inside of me. God cares. God is a power that is available to me. I don't know that's true. I have no feeling about that. I have no certitude about that. But every day I behave as if that is true. That's trust.
And the weird thing is, because I just keep asking, you know, what do you want me to know? Or
great. It's a great question.
And the weird thing is, I'll make a phone call, an outreach call, and I'll get this response. I'm like, oh, why do I doubt it? It's just that kind of uncertainty. Just that uncertainty.
It's okay. I mean, you're welcome to the human race. Well, yeah. Do you think we're all going to walk around with no concern and no doubt and no mistakes? Oh my goodness. I make mistakes, small ones now, thank God, but I make them every day.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you, and this was really this has come up for me quite a lot, is there's no such thing as not fair in reality. Reality just is. And reality has principles, it doesn't change. And I just wanted to share, on Wednesday, I was at a spiritual webinar teaching, and I don't know what happened. It was definitely spiritually led, because in that moment I have been working around a resentment I'm holding for my mom at the way she responded to trauma in my life when I was a child. And in that moment I had this, I don't know, dissolved resentment, and I could give her forgiveness, or I had forgiveness for her.
Yeah.
And it was because I could see the reality of the situation. It was, and I didn't get that until I literally read that, goes, oh, that's what happened.
That's it.
I could see that it was my,
No.
and she doesn't need my resentment. I don't need my resentment, because she's already doing it herself.
No.
You know, she has to forgive herself. But yeah, it's, I don't know, there's a lot of profound stuff happening, and I'm really grateful, because it's only started to evolve since I started doing these monthlies. So I'm very, very grateful. The AAA as well, acknowledge what happened, accept this is true and just what is. You know, that is, for me now, it's exactly what it is. You know, I don't know my reality. I've warped thinking, so I have to bounce it off people.
That will keep you in a humility. That attitude of, I really don't know what the truth is. And quite frankly, it's not possible for me to see the truth. I may think that I know, and I may be pretty confident, but underneath, there's still this humility that I could be wrong. Humility, Teresa of Avila, a 16th century mystic, said, humility is truth. Humility is seeing reality as close as you can to what it is. And seeing I'm just an ant on the log. And there's 7 billion of us on this log.
Oh, it's a pretty big log.
Yeah, it's a lot of ants. But I mean, It's like, yeah, sure, you have some gifts, I have some gifts, and it's wonderful. But let's have the biggest perspective that there is, and then get into the flow. That's what the word I love in the last 5 years is, what you were just talking about. Like I'm asking for direction, and I call somebody, and all of a sudden it's all laid out, and it's kind of like, oh, that was really easy.
If only it happened like that every day, but no, it doesn't.
It doesn't, but you know what? It's progress toward that, because my experience is confirmation of the flow. And oh, by the way, if you haven't read the book Forgive for Good by Fred Luskin, you would really enjoy it in light of your comments about forgiveness. I looked up the word in a dictionary, look at my hand. Forgiveness is a decision to release. So powerful. That's all it is. A decision to release. And as the St. Francis prayer said, and the Lord's Prayer said, when we release them, we are released. When we forgive their debts, our debts are forgiven. It's a paradox that is actually very true in the spiritual life, that it doesn't make any sense. The more I give it away, the more I build it. The more I give it away, the more I keep it. It's kind of like, what?
Yeah. And can I just ask you this question? I've had experience of forgiveness before, but this forgiveness is weird. I know that sounds weird as well.
No, it sounds like you're being released.
Yeah, because I forgave her, and I could see her pain, and it was just like, oh wow, it released it even more. It's like, I definitely don't want to have this, but I don't have the same liberation, or I think maybe that's what you're saying. It's slower release than I did in a previous forgiveness. It's like that. I was like, wow, whoa, this one is, maybe it's because it's my mom, I don't know, but it's definitely a slower, I don't know.
Well,
I feel exhausted after it.
It's a deeper, historically longer and deeper relationship with your mother, but it's a process, and it begins here. Forgiveness begins with step 4, column 3, column 4, resentment. That's where it begins, but it doesn't end forgiveness as a process until we
Okay.
finish step 9.
Oh, okay.
That's my experience. And read Fred Luskin's book, Forgive for Good. He's a psychologist, not in a 12-step, no spirituality, strictly human behavior. It's fabulous. Once you've done the step 4, step 5 work, it makes eminent sense to see it from a psychologist standpoint.
Yeah, my question is, I'm trying to determine if I have some resentments, I think, over some of the things my sponsor's saying and doing, and I'm wondering if it's more my problem or his problem.
Yeah. Are you open to discuss that with him?
Maybe. Maybe after I'm done talking with you. The point of contention is that there's a number of things. When the last time I talked to him, or the last few times I talked to him, he's got 3 years sober, and he doesn't want to hear about my past or any negative things. So he'll say, "Stop! I'm going to stop you there. I don't want to hear anything negative that's going on in your life, and I don't want to hear about any of your past issues. We're just here to talk about the here and now and the present." And then I had a relapse after 6 months, and I didn't call him. I should have. And there's the should again. It would have been more beneficial for me if I had called him and his reaction.
Much better phrase.
Yeah. His reaction was, "Why didn't you effing call me?" And
Well, but all right. So, are you working steps with him? No, the answer is no. If you have to hesitate, the answer is no. So why do you have a sponsor?
Well, I have a sponsor taking through the steps, but I've been working the steps with your program. And then
This is not working the steps. This is getting acquainted with either the bigger picture or the smaller picture, but this is not working the steps. You need individual guidance, not a general workshop like this. I mean, you could do some work and it'll be very productive, but it'll be much more productive if you have individual guidance in doing the steps. So why do you have this relationship you call sponsor?
Just because I thought it was beneficial for, I was told to get a sponsor from other people in the program, and initially I felt comfortable with him.
Good. And so what do you want from this person?
Well, I want him, he said that he worked, or that he did the step, he went through your programs and with the steps, and he said he will listen to my step 5. Go ahead and, listen to Herb K's program. Like you're doing, I told him I was doing that.
Okay, so he's not helping you with the steps?
Not really.
All right, so find somebody that will. But I mean, continue with this person. But if you want to deal with him, he gets to make the rules. You don't. He's your sponsor.
Right.
He doesn't want to hear about, if he doesn't want to hear about your past and anything negative, that's his rules. You don't have to agree with him, but if you want him as a sponsor, you do have to comply with him.
I agree with that. And I want your thoughts on one other thing. It's like, he is a very busy man, and he only has time to talk to me once a week, and I've accepted that as, that's fine.
So you need something else, find it. It
Well,
sounds to me like you need a step guide personally, an individual that will help guide you as a companion on the steps.
Thank you. One last thing, and then sometimes we set an appointment and he's not on a face-to-face call on Zoom, and he doesn't show up, or he's late, or
you can complain all you want, but you'll have a relationship if you want it, and you won't if you don't. You're in charge of your life, not him.
Well, I was just wondering what your recommendation would be.
Find somebody who is going to help you.
All right, that sounds terrific.
Yeah, either as a sponsor and or as a step guide. They could be two very different experiences. They were in my case. They don't have to be, but in your case, they seem they're going to have to be.
Okay, Herb. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to next week.
Oh, I'm glad you're asking these questions and involved, but get some personal help so that you have somebody that you can connect to on a reliable basis.
Ah, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Love you, Herb.
I got a number of sponsors immediately. I lost all these sponsors. I had resentment about losing all the sponsors.
All right. What's your question?
Well, if I lost all the sponsors and then maybe if I have resentment, that's why I can't get another sponsor anymore.
It sounds like you've got some stories that are just a bunch of lies. You don't lose sponsors.
Well, it seems like I've lost them all at stores.
You don't lose sponsors. Sorry. You don't lose sponsors. You either don't do what they suggest and they go away, or you go away, or you don't do what they suggest and they fire you. You don't lose sponsors.
Or that they get too busy.
Oh, well, then your picker's broken. So you probably need to pick somebody who is time available and is willing to help. Yeah, what 12-step program are you in? What is your primary addiction?
It just seems like it's like your picture, a box within a box within a box. I came to Nikkei, then
You need to get specific. Wait, you need to get specific and go to a 12-step specific fellowship and then listen for 2 or 3 weeks and then pick somebody who you intuitively think might help you.
What happens if it turns out I have like 10 programs I qualify for?
Then you have ADD and you need to focus.
Okay.
Because it's not real. You don't have 10 programs. You may be a real mess, but you don't have 10 programs. You have one primary program and deal with that. Then you might deal with something else. I deal with guys who are alcoholic, and once they get some traction in sobriety, they find out they're a sex addict. Okay. Or they find out that they're a food addict. Okay. But they dealt with their primary first.
Well, my first was Nikkei. I have 12 years nicotine free. That was my first sponsor in that program, but she got too busy to keep.
What's your current primary source of suffering?
I wound up in ACA.
I would suggest Al-Anon. ACA is a great program in terms of their literature, but their meetings that I've attended and are aware of are very problem-oriented, not solution-oriented, and there's not a lot of wisdom because it's a relatively new fellowship. Try Al-Anon for a while, and then pick somebody that's a wisdom woman in Al-Anon to at least guide you a little bit through some steps so that you get some clarity. Yep.
Oh, I get, okay. Well, maybe that also answers the fact that with the mystery of ACA that, well, for about 4 years ago, I found out about workaholism, that was.
Yeah, no, you're going to be hijacked by a variety of things because you're very scattered and you need to get some focus, and you need somebody who's going to help you as a mirror to keep you focused to get some traction in a direction.
Would that be maybe workaholism? Because
why don't you go to Al-Anon? Wait. Why don't you go to Al-Anon as I'm suggesting and not now try to broaden the conversation?
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. There's a solution. There's a solution, but you need to get specific and stay focused.
Part of it is when you were talking about something about shame. I'm ashamed or resentful that it takes so much work for me to what? Get to do that program. It takes a lot of work, and I'm doing it. And I've been in it 3.5. I know you're going to ask me, what's that question? So what's my question?
Well, what
I'm not that
program are you
honest.
talking about?
I'm not that honest with my sponsor. I need to, I think, get a new sponsor.
No, you
because
need to be honest.
I cheat on the food. I mean,
I don't care whether you cheat or not. Tell her you cheat. I'm a cheat. All
no,
right.
she knows that. I mean, I don't cheat.
Well,
I don't
what's
do
the
it
problem?
like FA does it perfect. Like I use.
No, they don't. I know lots of people in FA. They don't do it perfect. But what's your question? What is your concern?
My concern is, I think I'm angry. I'm 73 years old and I'm mad that I didn't figure out how to do my life at this point, financially.
Is that going to be very productive for you to bemoan your history?
No, I need to get current.
Well,
like, how do I deal
so
with?
Do you have a sponsor in AA?
Yes.
Are
Yes.
you current with your current sponsor and you've done a 4th step?
Yes.
How long ago?
A long time ago.
Give me a number.
I can't even remember.
It's ancient history. Do a 4th step in AA.
Okay. Okay. And not count the AA sponsor that I have right now. Just find somebody who I need to work the steps in AA.
Why not your sponsor?
Because she says we'll sponsor each other.
Oh, well, no, get a step guide then. You don't have to change sponsors. Get a step guide and work the steps out of AA. Yes.
Okay. What's a step guide? A person?
A person who takes you through the steps. They don't become your sponsor. They just take you through the steps.
I've been reflecting on really how, no one is really to blame for anything.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would agree with that statement, but put it into context so that I understand what it is you're saying.
So, okay. So in the context of, my parents were wounded inner children as well.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, they might have done a shitty job. Of course, they're to blame in that sense. All right, they were poor parents. Yeah, that's just what it is.
Right, but then that they did the best with what they had, and that's why, they're not really to blame. You know what I'm saying? That's the sense.
They're just careful that you don't get unrealistic too. But go ahead. Where are you going with this?
So I have really deep resentments towards them about stuff in the childhood, which again,
of course, that's your problem.
Yeah. So you were talking about the feeling powerless, like it's just as powerless over the resentment as you are over the addiction.
That's what Bill says on page 66. Yes.
Okay. So that's where you find the prayer to pray every day until that resentment lifts.
That's my experience with it in combination with doing step 4 inventory. That is correct.
Okay. All right. That was really all. But I guess for me is that I do have problems believing that would happen.
Well, okay. I mean, that's your problem in your belief. Okay. I'm a witness that it worked, and I have hundreds and thousands of other people who have adopted the practice and had an experience. So you might be an exemption. Maybe it won't work for you. I don't know that, but the probabilities are it will, since it worked for everybody else.
But what about
it's not gonna work if you pick it up like a tool and that's all you're doing. It might. I have no idea with the power of prayer, but it's a combination of looking at column 3, your beliefs that are delusional, and looking at column 4 at your motives, which are corrupt, and taking a look at this current feeling that you have and owning it yourself, and quit being a victim. I hear it in your tone. I hear it in your words. I hear it in your voice. I mean, you're a perennial victim. All right. You're you've marinated in it. And it's very difficult to heal from it. I'm not saying that because that's where I was. I had volcanic hot red rage toward my father, even though he was dead, and I was 4 years sober. And I'd done lots of therapy around it, but I couldn't get free of it until I began doing this work. And over a couple journeys through the steps, I was able to get free of it.
Yeah, no, and I'm just thinking about the psychology of stuff because, like I, I've been listening to your stuff for a while, and I've attended.
Right.
Okay, so and I study psychology, and I don't know where
It's not about psychology, although it is in a way, but it's not. This is about theology.
But what about the trauma though associated?
What about, if you have trauma, go to a trauma expert. Fine. I don't deal with trauma. I'm not an expert. I don't have an education in that area, or certificates or degrees or experience. This work begins to heal even trauma, but I send people all the time to outpatient professionals or sometimes even inpatient institutions. I've had people go into a 7-day or a 14-day or a 30-day treatment center for their trauma of their family of origin. Sometimes professional intervention is necessary.
Right. So the link between victimhood and trauma.
Well, trauma is real. Trauma is real. Victim is an attitude and a decision.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. You were a victim in the sense that you were traumatized, but here you are, and the circumstances aren't there anymore. And all you're doing is using your history as a scapegoat for your personal difficulties, rather than take responsibility and begin the process, the difficult journey of healing.
So, but like, no, and I get it, and I see where you're coming from, and I'm just trying to have a bit of a shift in my own perspective. And I guess, part of me wants to tell you the story and justify,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Everybody I ever met is a victim.
Everyone wants to tell you, but
I'm serious. Everybody I've ever met is a victim until they do this work, and then they are the perpetrator.
Right. And I guess for me, it's I you know how you talked about before about making it an illusion. What did you call it? You said something about it's an illusion, but you use it as a wall, and then it becomes your prison. Do you remember saying something like that? What did you say?
Of course, I say it all the time. You're right.
So now I can actually see that I'm imprisoning myself. Right.
There
I
you
can
go.
see that. I definitely see
Wow,
that.
that's a breakthrough. That's a spiritual awakening, and that's a gift of the spirit.
Okay.
Yeah.
However, now this is where, and I can
Now
see
the
it.
hard work begins.
I can see it. I can see that it's me. Right. I do. I can see
Now
it.
the hard work begins of really absorbing it and unpacking as to what it really means. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's just that this is where I've lived my life. This has been the foundation of my life, right?
Yep.
This is where I've built everything on. This has been my house. Yep. And now realizing this, it's like I'm really scared to go into the unknown. And I also like what you said about how you're willing every day to learn new information about stuff that you don't know about. And I guess that's all I can really do right now. I think that yes, there's the forgiveness part that I'm going to work on. But I think more than that, it's like by not forgiving, I can hold on. That's what it is. By not forgiving, it keeps me safe and protected.
No, that's a delusion.
Exactly.
By not forgiving, you think it keeps you safe and protected, but what it does, it poisons every cell in your system.
Exactly. And so it's just really, this is more about the unknown now, and just like, well, my life is going to be completely different and I don't know what it's going to look like. So I'm just going to be resentful for the rest of my life.
No, you're not. You're choosing to engage in a healing process, and you're willing to be given a compass to navigate the path. And you will not control the path nor the outcome.
Right. And it's careful what you wish for, because you just might get it.
Well, then you want to revisit what your concept of God is, because If your God is not big enough, get a bigger one.
Yeah, and it's all, for me, it's all about trust.
Well, that's embedded in what I just said.
To still get a new God if I don't trust my new God. If
you don't trust your current God, get a new one. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, one that you can believe in, or at least want to believe in, and hope that exists, and then act as if you do trust it.
And then if I'm overwhelmed by the fear, that just means there's more work for me to do around fear.
Probably. You won't be overwhelmed. You're strong. You show up. You talk like this. You that's an old idea. You're not overwhelmed. Here you are, confronting yourself in public, for God's sakes.
Okay, so then to be really honest with you, then I'm just saying that I'm really scared because
Yes.
I see the truth.
Yes. Well, you don't know what it means, and yes, it's a process, and yes, there might be suffering entailed in it. Yes, but it's like surgery. On the other side of surgery, successfully done, is healing. All right.
That's powerful. Thank you, Herb.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the image, and it's real. This isn't poetry. I'm talking about real life. You're definitely connected and on the right path. Just breathe in, breathe out. Get some help, though. We can't do this on our own.
I'm getting help. Don't worry.
All right. Excellent. Good. Thank you.
Faith is a decision, belief is acceptance, and trust is, could you just go over those three words again, those three concepts?
If you want to get a deeper read on that, listen to my audio on step 2, or watch the video I did in February on step 2. Because it's a code that I broke looking at page 53 in the big book. Bill says, God is or God isn't. What is your choice? We are confronted with the question of faith, is the next line. Well, I confronted myself. What does faith mean? I looked it up in a dictionary. It wasn't very helpful. Faith is belief. I looked up belief. Belief is faith. I looked up trust, and it says trust is belief and faith. And it was like a jumble. It was like a cycle that didn't have any real meaning to it. And so I looked at that word. God is or God isn't. What is your choice? We are confronted with the question of faith. Oh my God. Faith is just a decision. God is. But my belief is the acceptance that that's true. And then I translate it into action, and that's my trust. Faith is my decision. Belief is my acceptance that it's true. And trust is behaving as if I actually accept it. That's a short version.
Okay, and then one last thing. You talked about fear. My internal core seems to be fear. You said yours is shame.
Yeah.
Could you touch on the difference?
It goes back to the biology that Bill connotes in chapter 4 of the 12 and 12, where he says instincts gone awry. The biological instincts of survival are fight, flight, and freeze. Fight, anger, resentment. Flight, fear, anxiety, running. Freeze, camouflage, hiding, dishonesty, shame. I hide because I'm ashamed of who I am. Now, different people will have different reactions. Predominantly, we all have all three. It's sort of a personality study that I've been involved in from a psychological standpoint. Does that make sense?
Totally, yes.
Yeah, it obviously I'm giving you the very distilled version of it.
Yeah, no, indeed. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, you guys have been, again, wonderful, engaged, and great questions. I'm on fire with you guys. That's so fabulous. I'm going to put up the, put up the prayer of St. Francis. This is the prayer of the turning. Listen to the turning. This is the prayer that expresses a process. This is a prayer that expresses the promises, the turning from self-centeredness to other-centeredness. This captures the whole spirit of the 12-step process. The 12-step process is a commitment to turn in step 3, and the experience of turning by the end of step 9, those promises. And then a life, Bill calls it our way of life, as we enter the world of the spirit, of staying turned in alignment with, in orbit around the light, an effective relationship with light. Listen to all of that as we pray this prayer of St. Francis. You're all muted. Pray out loud if you care to, pray quietly if you care to, or just be open as you perhaps read these words as a prayer and a confirmation of an inspiration as well as an aspiration. This is my intention, to become a channel of light. Lord, make me a channel of your peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven, it is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen. Eckhart Tolle, in his Power of Now, says, the secret to life, pretty ominous, the secret to life is to die before you die and realize that there is no death. You see, step 4 is about the death of the false self, the deconstruction of that false self, the deconstruction and the peeling away of the mask, the persona, the Hollywood storefront, that prison, so that the real self can be released and have freedom. Thanks, everybody.